Hey, level 2 students. We're still looking at parts of speech. And yeah, welcome to your lesson on participial phrases. So let's look at your objective for today. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify participial phrases in sentences, and you will be able to build sentences with participial phrases. Now, we're going to try to do this differently this time. I didn't put a PowerPoint together for you. So what we're going to be doing today is use this website. It's an article, well, it's a lesson on participial phrases that I found on Purdue OWL Writing Lab. So we're going to be using it today instead of a PowerPoint. It's pretty straightforward. Just pretty much going to be reading what it is, and yeah, you will see it's very intuitive. But first thing you need to remember to know, well, participial phrases, you should avoid confusing them with gerund phrases. We'll look at that in a little while. But before we get into participial phrases, let's first look at participle. What is a participle? A participle is a verbal that is used as an adjective and most often ends in ing or ed. Now, because it ends in ing, it can be very easy for you to confuse it with the gerund phrase. Now, let's keep going. You will see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. The term verbal indicates that a participle, like the other two kinds of verbals, is based on a verb and therefore expresses an action or state of being. However, since they function as adjectives, participles modify nouns or pronouns. There are two types of participle: present participle and past participle. Present participles and an ing, past participles and an ed, d, tn, or an e, as in the word asked, eaten, saved, dealt, seen, and gone. Now let's look at some sentences. The crying baby had a wet diaper. Now if you had a gerund phrase because of the verb crying in this sentence, if it was a gerund phrase, now the first phrase, the first clause which has the gerund would be the subject. It would be considered as a noun. So the gerund phrase is considered as a noun, but the participial phrase, although you can find a gerund in it, is acting as an adjective. In this sentence, for example, the crying baby had a wet diaper. The baby was crying. The baby who had a wet diaper was crying. Shaken. The second sentence, shaken, he walked away from the wrecked car. The burning log fell off the fire. Smiling, she hugged the panting dog. Now let's read what about participial phrase. A participial phrase is a group of words consisting of a participle and the modifiers, and or pronouns, nouns, phrase that function as direct object, indirect objects, or complement of the action or state expressed in the participle. For example, removing his coat, Jack washed to the river. Now you can easily see which part of this sentence is the participle. The participle is removing, and his coat is the direct object of the action that is expressed. So Jack washed to the river while he was removing his coat. So this is because of that, the participle phrase function as an adjective. What was that? Sorry about that. I don't know what that was. So let's keep going. The participial phrase functions in this sentence as an adjective that modifies Jack. Now let's look at another sentence. Dolores noticed her cousin walking along the shoreline. Walking is it's a gerund here, but it looks like a gerund, but it's really the participle. Let's look at that. This participle phrase functions as an adjective that modifies cousin. Walking is the participle. Along the shoreline is a prepositional phrase that acts as an adverb. Now you can go back to your lesson on prepositional phrase to have a better idea of what this means. Now, another sentence. Children interested in music early develop strong intellectual skills. Here it functions as an adjective as well. It's modifying children. Now you can see it ends with ed. Interested. This is clearly the participle. Interested in music, which is the direct object. And early is an adverb. Now, children interested in music develop strong intellectual skill. It's easy for you now to just identify the participial phrase in this sentence. Let's look at another one. Having seen a gymnast, Lynn knew the importance of exercise. Still, it's acting as an adjective and it's modifying Lynn having been, because she knows firsthand that exercise is important because she has been a gymnast. Now, a gymnast is the subject, complement for Lynn. All right, now let's keep going. In order to prevent confusion, a participial phrase must be placed as close to the noun it modifies as possible, and the noun must be clearly stated. Now, why you should do that is because there is this phenomenon that is called the dangling modifier. There is also the dangling gerund. So when something is dangling, that means it's awkward. It's creating confusion. It's making it so that you can't understand clearly. Well, it's pretty much a mistake. Dangling. When a part of speech is dangling, it means that there is a mistake in the sentence. Let's look at these two sentences. Carrying a heavy pile of books, his foot caught on a step. Now, this would mean that his foot was carrying a heavy pile of books. You see why it's very easy for you to confuse people if you don't place the participial phrase very close to the noun that it modifies. Let's look at the second sentence. Carrying a heavy pile of books, he caught his foot on the step. Now this is what the person really wanted to say. Somebody was carrying a heavy pile of books, and this person caught his foot on a step. So this is a better way to write it than carrying a heavy pile of books, his foot caught on a step, because the confusion here is maybe his foot was carrying the heavy pile of books. Now this is pretty much what this paragraph explains, so we can skip it all together, or you can go back and read it. You can pause the video and read it. But now let's look at the importance of punctuation. When a participial phrase begins a sentence, a comma should be placed after the phrase. Arriving at the store, I found that it was closed. Because if you don't have this comma here, then it's not going to be all right. You will not have what you wanted to do. Washing and polishing the car, Frank developed sore muscles. If the participle or participial phrase comes in the middle of a sentence, it should be set off with commas only if the information is not essential to the meaning of the sentence. Sid, watching an old movie, drifted in and out of sleep. That means he slept, he woke up, he went back to sleep, and he woke up again as he was watching the old movie. Now, Sid was watching an old movie that was so boring that it kept drifting in and out of sleep. The church, destroyed by a fire, was never built. Now look at that note. If a participial phrase is essential to the meaning of the sentence, no commas should be used. The student earning the highest grade point average will receive a special reward. A special reward. The guy wearing the chicken costume is my cousin. Now try to put a comma in these sentences and see what sense it will make. As you can see, it will make no sense. Let's look at that. The guy, comma, wearing the chicken costume, comma, is my cousin. So it's very important. Now you need to really pay attention to the importance of punctuation when you are dealing with participial phrases. Okay, so look at that. If a participial phrase comes at the end of the sentence, the comma usually precedes the phrase if it modifies it. Let's look at that. Let's go back. If a participial phrase comes at the end of a sentence, a comma usually precedes the phrase if it modifies an earlier word in the sentence, but not if the phrase directly follows the word it modifies. For example, the local residents often saw Ken wandering through the streets. The phrase modifies Ken, not residents. Tom nervously watched the woman, alarmed by her silence. The phrase modifies Tom, not the woman. Now, just a few points to remember. A participle is a verbal ending in ing. This is going to be the present, or ed, en, d, tn, or ne. This is going to be the past participle that functions as an adjective and that modifies a noun or pronoun. A participial phrase consists of a participle plus modifiers, objects, and or complements. Participles in participial phrases must be placed as close as the noun or pronouns they modify as possible, and those nouns or pronouns must be clearly stated. A participial phrase is set off with commas when it A comes at the beginning of a sentence, B interrupts a sentence as non-essential element, B interrupts a sentence as a non-essential element, C when it comes at the end of a sentence and is separated from the word it modifies. Now you can take a moment. This was kind of a short video. We were just basically reading this lesson. So you can pause and go back and see what it is until you get the better hang of it. Now, what I'm going to jump onto is your classwork, what you have to do as a classwork for this lesson. So this is going to be your classwork. Let's look at what you have to do. Combine, you need to combine the sentences that we'll see below, combine the sentences in each set into a single clear sentence with at least one participial phrase. Here's an example. I stood. Now I have two sentences that I'm going to combine into one sentence, and I'm going to use at least one participial phrase. I stood on the roof of my apartment building at dawn. I watched the sun rise through gray clouds. Now, when I combine these two sentences, what I have is standing on the roof of my apartment building at dawn, I watched the sun rise through gray clouds. So now let's look at the exercise. You have this, you're going to do number 1 through number 6. You can pause just to make sure that you can read them. And after that, you will continue from number 6 and you will do number 7 through number 10. And below are the answers, but we're not gonna be looking at the answers. All right, guys, so this is pretty much it for this lesson on participial phrases. And yeah, so yeah, thank you.